Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we have a story on Disney and the recent report of them declaring themselves victors in the streaming wars. So without further ado, let's dive into this story of Disney winning the streaming wars and find out why that might not be so true and why Disney may face even more hurdles ahead in streaming. So after the Walt Disney Company reported its third quarter results, it became clear that the company had achieved something big: 221.1 million total numbers of subscribers across all of its services globally. So that's an important qualifier. Disney pulled ahead of Netflix's total global subscriber count of 220.7. 400,000 people. So technically this is a win, but is it though? A significant number of these people are gonna be bundles. Disney Plus bundled with Hulu and ESPN Plus. Now we know this is something that Disney pushes pretty hard. And if just 400,000 of those households really only watch two of these, then it becomes one of those questionable things about whether they are really leading these streaming wars. Okay, so let's set that aside for a sec. I understand why Disney is bundling. I mean, it makes sense. Disney Plus is sort of more family and kid oriented. Hulu's a little more adult oriented, and ESPN Plus, of course, is sports oriented, which is going to be a whole nother segment altogether. And so you have these three different segments which kind of hit different aspects of the family, and that's the reason why they're doing that. So I 100% understand why they're bundling. I'm just saying that this is kind of a precarious situation for them, because if some of the things Disney is facing in the tight and highly competitive streaming market continue, like this worsening economy, then people might be forced to make a decision about how many streaming services they're actually going to keep. And in this case, if someone decides to unbundle, then it's likely that when they unbundle, they're going to choose one channel and ditch two. And as a result, these numbers that Disney is playing with here, you could end up with one subscriber or one household essentially count as three subscribers, and that number could drop by 66% drastically if the economy continues to struggle. But let's look at Disney's strengths and how those might become a weakness. So first of all, we have this is demand shares for series by corporate owners. You can see the stake that Disney has here versus the stake that Netflix has here. And I believe this is the US market, and this is second quarter 2022. Now, the article here says, expect the future to look more like this as companies claw back rights to their own content on their streaming platforms. Yes, people are sort of bringing stuff back to themselves and maybe sharing a little bit less. Although David Zaslav from Warner Brothers has said that he actually plans to share properties that are not sort of tentpole properties. He'll keep the important tentpole franchises in Warner Brothers Discovery, but might be more willing to license out the rest of their catalog, because if it means he can make more money by making it available in more spaces, then it only makes economic sense. So while Disney looks to be in a stronger position than ever in this new streaming landscape, several observations should give any of the company's executives pause before they take that victory lap. And I 100% agree with that sentiment. First up is that a year ago, Disney Plus had 4 of the 5 most in-demand streaming originals. The past quarter, though, they only had 2. So they went from having 4 of the 5 most in-demand to having 2 of the most in-demand. That shows that there's, again, some chinks in the armor, and that is really related to what has been happening with Disney's Marvel and their Star Wars franchises. Now, we know from surveys that have come out recently that superhero movies are becoming less popular. Now, this has been chalked up to superhero fatigue, but let's also talk about something else that's related to both Marvel and Star Wars. Interest in both of these properties has declined, and part of this is due to the fact that, well, to be honest, Disney has been downright hostile towards the fans, especially with absurd, woke, and politically driven storytelling choices that quite honestly drive fans to question those decisions. And then the company feels the need to defend their decisions, insisting that fans wouldn't know good storytelling if it sat on their face. But here's the issue with that. The problem is that it largely does not matter if fans know good storytelling or not, because fans know what they like and they know what they don't like. This is an argument that a corporation, even a corporation like Disney, cannot win in the long term, because giving people things that they do not want does not translate into revenue. And we also see this in this article from Pirates and Princesses. And, I think they kind of represent the Star Wars fans that I know of. Now, again, we have the survey on the superhero movies, but let's focus on Star Wars for a second. And this op-ed basically says Disney has mismanaged Star Wars, and that's the truth. And you can read this article over at Pirates and Princesses. It's a good little article that talks about, how basically box office numbers show without a doubt that Disney has not done a good job of managing Star Wars. So let's look at those box office numbers. Now, in Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, we see that it opened and it had a $936 million run in the domestic gross market. Now, that is a good amount of money. This thing made, this movie made $2 billion worldwide. So that is a nice chunk of change, and that means it had a very nice return on their investment. But then just 2 years later, Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, only brought in $620 million in the domestic box office and only about $1.3 billion worldwide, which is a significant drop-off. If we're just looking at the domestic box office, that's about a 30% drop-off. And then just 2 years after that, The Rise of Skywalker set a non-blistering pace at $515 million in the domestic box office. So again, even lower. So even though it looks like Disney's franchises are all very strong, they're actually waning in interest. That's the last Star Wars movie that we've seen, and I don't know when we're going to see another one. They seem to be focused on series right now, and aside from The Mandalorian, which has been very popular with the fans, the other series like Kenobi or even Boba Fett have not really drawn the viewership that Disney would like to see. So Disney's, overconfidence in this area even extends to Disney Plus and streaming. In a show of overconfidence, Disney Plus scheduled Obi-Wan Kenobi to debut directly against the fourth season of Netflix's Stranger Things on May 27th. Stranger Things drew several times more demand than Obi-Wan Kenobi in both the global and US audiences. Now, Disney Plus pushed back the next Star Wars live-action series, Andor, from August 31st to September 21st in order to avoid competing with Game of Thrones spin-off House of Dragon and Amazon Prime Video's Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. Now, honestly, I think this is going to be a competition between which of these series sucks the most. But we shall see. It looks right now as if all three of them are going to be extremely woke, which does not bode well for the potential for good storytelling, because often one is substituted for the other. But let's go and look at US streaming and how Disney's growth has actually stalled. From this Daily Wire Plus article about Disney re-releasing old movies, and during the third quarter of its current fiscal year, the vast majority of growth arose from international users, with only 100,000 new subscriptions coming from the domestic market. Now, I've talked in a previous video about the headwinds that Disney faces in this area. First of all, the streaming market is extremely competitive and saturated. Platform demand shares for streaming video on demand for all series, we can see that actually Netflix has 19.4%, Hulu 19.2%, and Disney has just 6%. But here's where it gets interesting. All right, we have Discovery Plus at 6.4% and HBO Max at 11.5%. Now, when those two combine, suddenly they will have 17.9% of the market. And that puts them in pretty good competition with Netflix and Hulu. HBO Max and Discovery Plus together will be poised to be very competitive. And Disney, well, they're really going to probably need to make that decision about merging Disney Plus and Hulu in order to maintain their lead sooner rather than later. The other hurdle that Disney is facing that I've previously discussed in my streaming video was the political missteps that Disney has made. And the third issue, of course, that I've already mentioned is the worsening economy. But now we have 3 additional issues that Disney is facing. One of those is waning interest in Star Wars due to its own mismanagement. Another one is waning interest in Marvel. And again, this is due to Disney's own mismanagement of the franchises. And finally, waning interest in Pixar. And basically that's due to a lot of different factors. You could chalk it up to the pandemic, or the loss of John Lasseter, or the loss of talent, which is now following John Lasseter to Skydance. But no matter what you want to chalk it up to, there have been no good movies out of Pixar since The Incredibles. Well, if you want to look here, we can see The Incredibles came out in 2018, before the pandemic, and Toy Story 4 as well before the pandemic, just before the pandemic. Now, I didn't see Toy Story 4. It just didn't really appeal to me, but I did see Incredibles 2, and it was a pretty good movie. It also made a good run in the domestic box office with $600 million, but you can see it's been all downhill since then. Now, Pixar is beginning to suffer from the woke machinations that we're seeing affect Disney's other properties. We can see, for example, that Lightyear had a terrible domestic box office performance at $118 million. And with a production budget of $200 million, this thing needed to make $400 million to break even. And now finally, I want to show you an interesting picture because this is Disney Plus and this is how it's advertised. And if you notice here, what we're seeing is the major tentpole divisions of Disney. And those are Disney, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, and then National Geographic, or you can insert something else in its place. The big story here, though, is that Pixar is in decline, Marvel is in decline, Star Wars is in decline, Disney is struggling to add subscribers, and I just don't think that National Geographic is going to make up for this. That is why maybe it's a little bit too soon for Disney to be crowing about their streaming service and passing Netflix in the total number of streaming subscribers. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. And if you want to continue to smash the narrative, then smash the like, subscribe, and share buttons. And I will see you in the next video. Have a great day.